Welcome to the Get Good at Presenting podcast with Lee Jackson.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Get Good at Presenting with myself, Lee Jackson. I hope you're enjoying the episodes so far. I'm aiming to make them as down-to-earth and as non-jargony as possible, just to help you to be great when you're presenting. I've learned by listening to loads of people, and I've learned by watching lots of people, and so I'm trying to invite a lot of those people, some of my friends, some professional speakers, some people that are in and around the industry, and I've got a brilliant guest today. My friend Steve Bustin is here, so welcome, Steve.
Hey Lee, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, very good. So your website, Get Your Voice Heard. I love that.
It's funny. It was something that a client said to me. They said that's what you help people do, is you help people to get their voice heard. And I suppose that's really what I've spent most of my career doing. So yeah, it was one of those things where somebody said it and I thought, that's good, I'm going to nick that. So yeah, now it's the business name.
Yeah, it's often kind of what your clients say to you that becomes your business often, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, completely. And actually, it's amazing how many people have never asked their client, what do we do for you? It's one of the things I actually talk about from the stage sometimes is, it's a great thing to do. You might be surprised by the answer.
Yeah, that's right. And that's one of the reasons I went with, I've sort of been rebranding over the last few months with Get Good and stuff. And so Get Good is my kind of thing. You help us to get goodly. You help us to get confident. It was all around that kind of discussions, really. I mean, I know you because you're on the board of the Professional Speaking Association, the PSA. I've known you through that for a few years now, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the first time we met, we randomly had breakfast at a PSA conference, probably about, 6 or 7 years ago. I remember just randomly having breakfast with you, and that's how we met, I think.
And that's one of the joys of that sort of event, isn't it? You sit down at a table, there's an empty seat opposite you, and somebody says, "Can I join you?" And that to me is the best bit about those sorts of events. The chance to sit down and start talking to people. So yeah, it must be 5 or 6 years ago at least.
Yeah, and it's very rare because I don't really talk to many people at breakfast, to be honest, Steve. So it's kind of,
you're not really a morning person.
I'm not known for my. Well, I can get up and do it when I have to, but my option would be for events to be in the afternoon and evening if I had a choice. We all know our little strengths and weaknesses, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, you need a little sign to put on your table saying, "Go away, leave me alone." I
was being sociable, and you were very kind to me, so that's nice. So, but your background is not actually as a speaker and presentation coach. Your background is sort of journalism, is that right?
Yeah, I'm a journalist by background. Please don't hate me. I haven't hacked a phone, I promise. So yeah, I started my career as a journalist for BBC. Worked at Broadcasting House initially, and then moved over to Television Centre. And worked across various radio and TV networks. So yeah, it was a fascinating way to get going. I found myself as a voyeur, if you like, at world events. The strange thing about being a journalist is you're reporting on the interesting and exciting things that other people are doing. So it's very easy to think of yourself as being part of these big events, but actually you're one step removed from them. So it was a really interesting experience, fascinating place to work.
Yeah. I do write for a men's magazine called Sorted, and it's the only kind of vaguely journalism thing I do. And I've written for it every couple of months or so. And they sort of gave me a press pass type thing, and it got me to meet the Dalai Lama once with that press pass. So I actually got in the room with people from the BBC and everything else, and I was just like, "What am I doing here?" But I got to ask him a question, so I was like, "Yeah, there's something magical about those little press passes, right?"
Oh, there is, and it's interesting. I mean, people do still respect journalists, and people will go out of their way to help a journalist because ultimately they are just doing a job. Journalism as an industry has become, I think it's fair to say, devalued over the last few years, and they've become the whipping boys in many ways. But actually, most journalists are there to report or to find and report the truth. So yeah, it's always great. I mean, press pass will allow you to access all areas. So, but it was interesting because I was at the Bee for about 7 or 8 years, interviewed all sorts of people. I've doorstepped Margaret Thatcher. I interviewed Tony Blair very briefly. Interviewed John Prescott a number of times, which is fun. But actually, in the end, I suddenly realised that I was never going to get to the top in where I was because I wasn't obsessed with news in the way that a lot of my colleagues were just obsessive. I was really interested in communication. I was really interested in stories and things, but actually I wasn't obsessed as a journalist, and I could recognise that those who were getting ahead in their careers were the ones who were obsessive about it. So I then got offered the opportunity to jump ship. Somebody headhunted me to go and become PR director for a .com, and I took it, which I think was a at the time was a scary step. It was a startup. They just got £3.5 million of venture capital, which we then proceeded to burn our way through in 18 months and go bust.
It wasn't just you. It wasn't just you that burned that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. But it was. I mean, this was 2000, 2001, 2002. It was absolutely the dot-com bubble, and I learned a lot about business watching a business go out of business. I think a number of my colleagues could see the writing on the wall for some months. We could see that the revenue wasn't there, the cash flow wasn't there, all those sorts of things. But it was, I mean, I have to say, we did the dot-com lifestyle. We did have the warehouse offices in Shoreditch. We did do team days to health spas. We did do the whole dot-com bubble, which was great fun. It was fun spending that money, but I'm glad it wasn't my cash. But it was then when that went down that I started doing freelance gigs initially, sort of as a journalist and some PR, and that became my business. Originally I was sort of tiding myself over and suddenly thought, you know what, I can make a go of this. So originally I sort of set myself up at doing PR with a bit of freelance print journalism on the side, which is a slightly unholy mix. But then people started asking me to go and speak at events. I was a very early adopter with social media. In fact, with the internet generally, I was one of the small team responsible for introducing the internet into the BBC newsroom.
Really? Yeah. Was it like brought in on like a machine or something?
Virtually,
it was like,
yes.
This is the internet here.
They were so skeptical. I remember us running a webinar and one of my colleagues standing up saying, right, this is called Google. We think this is going to be quite interesting. And all the editors going, yeah. Tell us another one. We're all using Ask Jeeves. We don't need another search engine. So people started asking me to go in and talk about social media. And then people said, would you come and speak at a conference? And then people said, actually, you're quite good on stage. Can you teach me how to do presentations and train the trainer? And my PR business gradually grew to become, I suppose, a training business and some speaking. Eventually, it got to a point where I was just like, actually, what I'm really enjoying is the training and speaking. And I had a business coach who said, why on earth are you still doing PR? It's not making you happy. You've got another revenue stream that actually is more lucrative and that you really enjoy. Go and do that. So I ended up, after 11 or 12 years running the PR business, I ended up firing my final client. And and then,
no freelancer ever has fired a client, right?
That's it. It's the best feeling. I mean, they were a lovely company, but it was actually a really good feeling knowing that I could put that behind me and concentrate on what I do now, really.
Yeah. I remember our speaker colleague, Steve McDermott. I don't know, you know Steve a little bit. He's from the Northeast. He's been around a while. He was an award-winning speaker. And I went on one of his courses early on when I was starting. And he used to be in advertising. And he said he knew he'd finished his time in advertising when McCain, the frozen food company, came in, and their opening line was, "It's a very exciting time for frozen chips right now."
Yeah, run for the hills. Your career is over at that point.
He thought, yeah, I'm going to leave advertising and become a speaker now. And I thought it was a great story. Similar kind of thing, right? You got to go with where you're passionate. And I think I think when people, I don't know whether I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I think the issue of validation is so important. When I was a 19, 20-year-old, when I first did a talk at a youth group or something, or someone said to me, "You're really good at that, Lee." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Am I?" because I genuinely wasn't self-aware. I genuinely didn't realize. But when someone validates your skills, not in a kind of it's not like your family trying to be nice to you, like, "Oh, that was lovely." That's not what I mean. But when someone says you're really good at that, then you do have to take notice, don't you?
Completely. And yeah, I mean, the same happened to me. It was people started saying, "Oh, actually, you're good at that. Can you come and do this? Can you teach me how to do it?" And I suppose it's when somebody who doesn't need to boost you up.
Yeah.
And as you say, says you're good at this, and particularly when they say, "Can you teach me how to do it?" You think, okay, there is something in this. I'm also a big believer in the Sunday night blues problem. If you're somebody who gets Sunday night blues, and you're thinking, "Oh, another working week," you're in the wrong job. I think it's important that actually, if you recognise that, and if you're not enjoying what you're doing, for heaven's sake, go and do something else. Life's too short to be stuck in a job that you're not enjoying. And I did get a bit like that with PR. So actually, when I suddenly realised, and it was pointed out to me, that I had an alternative revenue stream, getting rid of it, getting shot of it, freed me up in so many ways. And I'm lucky. I love what I do. I really enjoy the variety. I enjoy the challenges it gives me. I enjoy the people I get to work with. So yeah, I don't get something like blues. I enjoy what I do. I don't let it take over my life. I enjoy having a work-life balance, but I do think, something like blues is a good acid test. If you're on a Sunday night, heavy heart, preparing for a working week, something's got to change.
I still think being a speaker and presentation coach, which is the two halves of my job, I still think it's quite a tough job, because I don't get Sunday night blues, but I might get a little bit of Sunday night nerves.
Oh yeah.
Or I might be thinking about Monday, but it's not in a woe is me kind of way. It's in a kind of excited but a little bit apprehensive,
Yeah. And that's actually, I think, part of the fun is that looking forward to the week and that apprehension, that what am I doing next and what's the challenge this week, and that sort of stuff is really exciting, and it is one of the joys of doing what we do.
Absolutely, yeah. What I was interested in, nice question for you, maybe, Steve, is that because you still do obviously writing, and you still do stuff, and you work with the PSA, you do some, you write stuff. I'm trying to think of the right word, but I work with clients often who will bring me a speech, but it's a written speech, and then we have a dialogue about the written word is different to the spoken word. So because you've lived in both those camps, you're a speaker, you're a presentation coach, but you're a journalist. Words, in those days, they probably never had a little photograph of you. It was just literally the words on the page. What kind of, can you speak into that a little bit, the difference between written and spoken, and how you've had to learn to do and have a foot in both of those camps, really?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, my journalism initially was broadcast. I mean, that's where I did my journalistic training, was within the BBC. So it was all about broadcast, which is, of course, the spoken word. Yes, you write a script, but you're writing for it to be spoken. It took me a while actually to then transfer my skills into the written word. And, I wrote a lot. I wrote for the Times, I wrote for Gay Times, I wrote for all sorts of publications for several years. And that took me a while to flick that over. And what I now love about the written word is the opportunity to be a bit more discursive, to be a bit more exploratory. Yeah. But actually, you've still got to make sure it's direct, it's clear, it's easy to read. In the same way that you've got to make your speech is direct, easy to hear, clarity, brevity, all those sorts of things. But yeah, there is definitely a difference. And you're absolutely right. A lot of people will write their script longhand and then either read it, God forbid, or parrot it. They'll learn it and you can hear it. And it is just little things like the spoken word on the whole is shorter sentences. It's punchier. On the whole, the spoken word is more immediate, probably more colloquial. People have an awful tendency when they're writing to write up. So they'll try and use more technical language. They'll try and make themselves sound clever. They want to sort of craft it. I often say to people, when I'm working with clients, I mean, similar to you as a presentation coach, talk to me as if we're down the pub. Tell me this story. Tell me about this fact. Encourage me to do this thing as if we were sat having a pint by the bar. And find that level of language, and that sort of, it is a slightly more informal style, but it's just a more welcoming language. I think an awful lot of people, they think they sound clever, they think they sound more intelligent by using long phrases, by using long words, by using complicated stuff, and I just think that's rubbish. Keep it simple. That speech was too simple, said no one, ever. Yes. It's like, actually, people would rather that you said something that was easy to understand and fun to listen to than that you try and show off. And that's, I think, what is at the heart of a lot of it. People try to show off and people try to cover up for lack of expertise or lack of anything real to say. Yeah.
I even saw on Twitter today, I follow QI, the TV program QI. Of course, it's all about kind of highbrow language, and I can't remember the name of the word now, but there's a word which means people trying to use too much highbrow language, but the word, but the word for that is almost unpronounceable and highbrow, ironically.
Fantastic.
So it's a beautiful kind of thing. But everyone, I think that there's a lot of tension with my clients. Maybe you get it too. Is they think that, but I'm in a business setting, so I can't be simple. I can't be informal because I have to be professional in air quotes. And how do you respond to clients that say, "Oh no, I can't talk like I'm down the pub"? How do you respond to that, Steve? When you,
I always say informality is not unprofessional. You're having a conversation with somebody, and if in a way you and I are talking one to one, then actually we're going to be informal. We're going to have a particular style of language, and you just have that conversation with a group of people instead of one to one. My big thing is that all communication should be a two-way process. It's a conversation, whether it's it is one-to-one or whether it's you standing in front of 2,000 people. It's still a conversation. There's still feedback going on all the time that you as a speaker have to be aware of. So I think there is a real issue with that people, think that you have to be highfalutin to sound professional. And the trouble is, so many business people end up going into what I call apprentice speak, and they start sounding like a contestant on The Apprentice. You go, oh, shut up. Nobody talks like that. Nobody says, oh, yes, we're going to give 110%. No, you can't.
Yes.
And it's like the apprentice candidates.
It's 100% or less.
No.
There is no.
Yeah. Or I'm really unique. No, you're not. There's no degrees of uniqueness. You are either unique or you are not. I mean, all those sorts of things, they really wind me up, I have to say. But I think people use that language because they think that's the language of business. And that's why the apprentice candidates use it, because they think that is the language you have to use to sound professional, which is utter rubbish. I think it actually makes you sound unprofessional because it does sound like you're covering your own back to hide the stuff you don't know.
Because really, there's only a few times when you have to be really scripted. The only 3 times I've done a scripted talk have been when I've spoken at funerals. And right, those are only 3 times I've definitely done that. And one quite recently with our colleague Joy Marsden, who sadly passed away, and I had to do that. And I thought I need to be scripted. And
you did it brilliantly, I have to say.
Oh well, bless you, thank you. It was after my dad's funeral. That was probably the toughest talk I've ever done. Really tough, but so I knew then I had to write it down, just because I didn't want to have to think too much. So I was still trying to get some eye contact, which was probably my downfall, because I then started to see the family and people upset and everything. So it was tough to get through. But that's the only time I've really been scripted. Yeah. And politicians have to be scripted to be careful what they say. And if a company has made a big mistake and they've got to apologize, for instance, Alton Towers a few years ago, there was a big accident, wasn't there? So when you've got to be scripted in that way. But otherwise, things don't have to be scripted. And I think people think everything has to be. And
my adage when I'm coaching people is know what you want to say, but don't know your words. I.e., be aware of the points you want to make, the stories you're going to tell, all that sort of stuff, but don't write it down. Don't learn it. Don't parrot it. The only exception to that, I always say, is your opening couple of lines and maybe your closing couple of lines. I think actually you should know your opening off by heart to be able to deliver it with confidence, to be able to deliver it clearly, and to make an impact. And possibly the same at the closing, because again, you want it to sound as good as possible. Between that, no. I mean, I never ever let anybody go on stage with a longhand script, because you will end up reading it. Doesn't matter how much you practiced it. If you walk on stage with those notes in your hand, you will end up reading it. You're absolutely right. Something like a funeral is a very different context, but certainly in a business context, know your words. Sorry, know what you want to say, but don't know your words.
Yeah, and it's part of trusting yourself in the moment. So I talk a lot about great speakers are comfortable in their own skin to an extent. They're just authentic. They just stand up. They're able to do that. And so that partly of that is dealing with your anxiety and trusting that your experience will carry you through.
Yeah.
Because, going back to the pub analogy, if I just meet somebody random in a pub and I say, what do you do? Everybody can speak for 10 minutes about what they do without thinking about it. If they're just working in a warehouse or something else, they can just speak. They can just do that. And, that's just what we do, isn't it, as human beings? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but I think what happens is that people then overthink the whole process. So they don't actually trust themselves to actually talk about their business, to talk about whatever they do, their charity or whatever else. They just don't get that, which is a real shame. And I think sometimes it's just about trusting people, isn't it? It's just about trusting yourself, you know what I mean? So
completely. And a lot of people then end up going into sort of performance mode, and it's almost as if they're taking on this character, this sort of how they should present and all this stuff, which just comes across as really fake. I mean, actually, one of the things I've done with a few of my clients when I've been coaching is I've sent them off to do some improv. some improv comedy, because it's just brilliant at getting you to play actually and to be in the moment. And this whole idea of yes and, which is where you say something and you build on it.
Yeah.
But it's just, I mean, I've done quite a lot of improv over the last few years, and it's taught me that if, God forbid, something goes wrong, the brown stuff hits the big revolving thing, something vaguely appropriate will come out of my mouth. And it means I've lost the fear of drying on stage. I know that I can recover out of it.
Yeah.
And actually, because when you're doing something like improv comedy, you're just bouncing off somebody else in a way that as a speaker, you should be bouncing off the audience. You're building on what each other say. And actually, it just gets you into that mode that you can cope with most things.
Yeah, I'll probably interview my friend Paul Silky White. He runs the improv and comedy courses here in Leeds and Yorkshire.
Right.
And I've done all of his courses. I've done all 4 courses now. Mm-hmm. And I did the last, over the last 18 months, I did the last 2, and they were the improv courses.
Right.
And I've really enjoyed them. But what I've noticed is I didn't notice at the time, it does push me out of my comfort zone. But now when I'm on stage, I've just noticed since I've done those improv courses, there's a basic one where you just basically learn yes and, and then the advanced one, which was, long form and stuff like that, where you're doing 20-minute ones. And what I learned now is when I'm on stage, when something happens, if I'm hosting an event, I don't advertise myself as a host, but sometimes clients say, can you host it? So when I'm hosting an event or speaking, I've now got, it's like my brain is a bit quicker with those little lines now. Mm-hmm. It's like I've got an improv part of my brain that I didn't have 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you just kind of clicks in and it helps. And it's not Kenneth Williams. It's not smutty. It's not innuendo. It's just genuine like stuff. So I was doing a public sector NHS conference and they sent me the list of all of their job titles. And of course, like when there was 200 people there, and so I was skipping through these job titles, and most of them I didn't understand because it was all acronyms and it was all this. So I went through these job titles and just made little one-liner quips that I hadn't even pre-prepared, but it got some great laughs, because they realized that their job titles were crazy, So I was calling the pharmacists drug pushers and all this kind of stuff. And it was just lovely kind of light comedy, and they all had a real laugh together. But I wouldn't have been able to do that a couple of years ago. And it was the improv, I think, that sharpened that side of what I do. Yeah.
And I think that for people, particularly those looking to be professional speakers, but certainly those just looking, who want to get more competent on stage, it's actually thinking around some of those skills like improv, like comedy, all those sorts of things. Go out and get those skills, practice them, hone them. And they all feed into what you end up doing on stage even if you're doing a relatively dry business presentation, they're all part of the skill set.
Sure. So where do you stand on? I love comedy. We've talked about comedy a lot, and I love laughing. And I've seen you do stand-up comedy as well. But so where do you stand with kind of humor and presentations? And have you ever had clients who turn up and just say, "Please make me funny," and then you have to persuade them that maybe that's not the right thing to do? And how have you kind of tiptoe through the tulips on the comedy thing, because it's quite tricky, that one.
It is. I mean, I would on the whole say, rather than when people say, "Oh, can you make me funny?" I'll say, "Well, I can help you make it humorous." And I think there is a difference. You're not setting out with most business presentations to do stand up. You're not setting out to get huge guffaws and all that sort of stuff. If it happens, great. But on the whole, what people want is humor. They want it to be informal. They want it to make people smile. They want a bit of laughter. And that, I think, is so much of that comes out of what's going on around you. And again, this is where improv, I think, plays a big part. I always say that a lot of the best humor will come out of what is everybody thinking at the time. So if you're starting and you're in a room that is incredibly hot, start by just welcome to the sauna. We'll be putting steam on the coals fairly shortly, and it's that sort of thing where just everybody will laugh because they all go, yes, it's really hot in here. If you
so elephant in the room type stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there was something big on TV last night, or if the weather's appalling, or everybody's been delayed by traffic or something like that, if you can just say out loud what everybody is thinking and what's bothering people, actually people will laugh in response, because it's a recognition. And I think it's also great bonding, because it breaks down that thing about I'm the presenter and you're the audience. and actually says, we're all in this together. We all have the same experience. And I think it's a great way to start building rapport. And it can just be as simple as a comment on the decor in the room or the room itself. I've got, and there are standard lines here. Don't feel that you have to come up with something amazingly new. If I'm in a hotel conference room with big chandeliers, I will almost always start with a line about, I love these chandeliers, but there is a drag queen outside wants her earrings back. And it's not a particularly strong line, but it always people laugh because they look up and they look around. And again, it's that we're all in the same room. I suppose it's breaking the fourth wall. And, for me as a presenter and speaker, that's important. You've got to make sure you're breaking the fourth wall. And a lot of people, particularly when they're stuck in a script, might as well have that theatrical fourth wall in front of them because they're not actually acknowledging the fact that they're in the same room as the audience. And that's, I think, a real problem. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. And it's those, it's the Me Too moments, as Clive Gott used to say, creating those little Me Too moments when people put their hands up and I actually get people to put their hands up sometimes at the beginning of my talk or if I'm doing something, because even the act of putting the hand up is like, oh, we're in this together. Yeah. People get it. I ask some silly questions, but the hand up,
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in interaction. I think there are some speakers who just say, oh no, particularly if you're doing a keynote, if you're doing a big formal presentation that it's about you delivering. It's not about interaction. I'm like, in this day and age, people expect to be able to interact. People have got very short attention spans. And I think, straw polls, shows of hands, getting people to do stuff on the hashtag so you can pick it up on Twitter, I think is really important. And I think audiences really appreciate it. And I think on the whole, event organisers and bookers really appreciate it as well. I do think the days of 45 minutes, just me talking at you, are over. I think it's let's talk with you. And I'm actually I'm saying, whereas once people might say, can you do 45 minutes? It's now, can you come and do 20 minutes and then let's have 25 minutes of Q&A? I'm up for that.
Yeah.
So it suits me. It means I've got less work to do preparing.
Yeah, sure. Although we have talked on the podcast about a short talk being harder than a long talk in some ways.
Very much so.
For preparation. But it does mean you less. Yeah, I mean, I delivered, I was speaking at a business breakfast last week. I very rarely do these, but I was doing it as a favour for someone I've known really well. They gave me 40 minutes, presentation skills, general session on presentation skills. So I actually just did 20, and then I opened it up, and the other 20 was questions, and they loved it.
Yeah,
and they felt they got loads of value. Loads of people wanted to buy my book at the end. The people were connecting with me, and I think that was partly because of my style and down to earth stuff, but partly because I just said I'm just going to stop there now.
Yeah,
and then what questions have you got? And I had about 5 or 6 quality questions.
Yeah, because it means that the audience are driving the agenda. So they're telling you what they want to know. And that gives you a chance to deliver what they want to know. Whereas so often people, when they're putting together a presentation, all they'll think about is what they want to get out of it. They don't necessarily think about what the audience want to get out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you throw it open to questions, the audience get what they want because they have the opportunity to drive the agenda. So, yeah, I think that's a really strong way of doing it these days.
That's great. So some good stuff there. So know what you want to say, but don't know the words. Mm-hmm. Great. I like that, Steve. Don't be funny, but be humorous if you can work it out. And also the day of 45-minute keynotes is over. I like a bit of controversy. I like that.
Absolutely. And I just, I know, other people will disagree with me. So be it. I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. But I just what I'm seeing and the sorts of things I'm getting people come and asking me to help them with are much more interactive sessions these days.
Yeah, but there's always a lot of stuff in our industry, and if you're on LinkedIn and stuff, there's always things about once a week something pops up about virtual speaking, and there's always some company somewhere in Japan working on a hologram of a speaker to be in the room. Yeah. And I being a little bit of a geek, I'm like, oh wow, that's very exciting. But then you forget about the interaction.
Yeah.
So, who's going to pay for me to be sat in my office to be in a hologram where I can't interact, I can't get eye contact, I can't see the color of the guy with the crazy shirt in the front row that I'm going to pick on a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you're going to miss all that. So it's all very well this virtual stuff, but actually, it means that all that interaction is pretty much gone, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think something like that hologram stuff and a lot of virtual speaking. Once you get over the novelty, which will wear out in about 5 minutes, actually it's still going to be driven by the content.
Yeah.
And Will we ever be replaced by holograms? I hope not. I don't think so, because actually people respond to interaction. They respond to being face to face with somebody. So, I don't think we're about to be replaced by bots anytime soon.
No. Great.
I hope not.
Some great stuff there, Steve. So, well, you've got a bit of a big thing coming up. A couple of years ago, I was president of the Professional Speaking Association, the PSA, and you are the incoming president.
I am. I'm currently president-elect. So I take over in October for a year. I'm already got plans for what I'm going to do. I'll be visiting all the PSA regions, all 13 of them, and I know what I'm going to be doing there. And then I'm also planning our convention for October 2020. Which is that's coming together, and we've got a new venue and a new name and a bit of a new format. So I'm hoping to shake it up a bit. I think I think it's important that we do something new and keep it fresh all the time. Otherwise, we end up doing same old. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm slightly nervous, I'll be honest. Because I've got big shoes to fill. Predecessors, yourself included, have done an amazing job in the role. But also because I'm putting myself out there. I'm putting my ideas out there. Some people won't like them. I'm aware of that.
I was talking about the other day with a friend of mine who's a leader, and I was saying that pretty much leadership now, they teach leadership on all these kind of courses, and that you spend 3 days doing Peter Drucker and you do this and that. But actually, I think leadership courses now should pretty much be 2 days. One is some basics of leadership, and the second one is when you say something that challenges people, they will push back at you. How are you going to deal with it?
Yeah.
Because that's just relative leadership, isn't it? You want to take someone somewhere, and out of 600 members in the PSA, obviously some people won't like that so much. And that's okay. That's part of the deal. So have you thought about how you're going to prepare for those kind of things too, the challenges as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to know what those are going to be like and where they're going to come from. I know, as like any membership organisation, there are always people with strong opinions, and if they feel they're not being heard, then they will kick off about it. But ultimately, I will do what I think is best. I'm aware that, I'm only there for a year. Somebody else will follow in my footsteps, and they may well do something different. And that's great. That's as it should be, as far as I'm concerned. But if I can provide value for people, if I can make sure that people come out of that year with a better business, and hopefully making more money, that's a good thing. But I want to take the year to bust some myths around the speaking industry and things. And it's one of the reasons I think people should be members of the PSA if they are trying to be a professional speaker, is because it is the trade body for what we do. And I think if you're not, you're missing out, and you're not going to be across latest thinking and best practice and all those sorts of things. So, I am looking forward to it. I'm trepidatious. I also keep looking at my diary and trying to work out how I'm going to run a business while doing all these PSA things at the same time.
Yes.
But I mean,
that's all right. You just kind of build it in, Steve. It kind of works, and I'm sure you'll be great at it. I mean, the 600 brilliant members. I love the banter. I love the encouragement and the challenge that I get from the organisation. And I guess I'm like 10 years into it now, or something like that. I can't imagine not being a member. I don't know why people would not want to join it. So if you're serious about speaking, you've got to hang out with other speakers. It's a no-brainer.
It is. I mean, the very first time I went along to a meeting in PSA London, it sounds like a cliche, but I walked in and did think, oh my God, this is my tribe. There are other people doing what I'm doing. Up to that point, I hadn't realised it was a career. I just thought it was me showing off. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, hang on, there's a whole room full of show-offs, and they're getting paid for it more than I am. So, it is, a bit of a cliche, but it is, for me, it is my tribe. I think of PSA members as my colleagues. And it's a huge honour to be asked to take over the presidency for a year, and for people to put their trust in me. And I have to recognise I'm not going to be able to please everybody all the time. Some people may think less of me for what I'm planning for the year, but you know what? Other people's opinion of me is none of my business. It's their business.
Absolutely, yeah. You just got to do what you can with authenticity, with integrity. Yeah, so I really enjoyed my year. You'll be great, Steve, I'm sure. And your platform skills are great too, because you do slightly. There's a couple of kind of formal presentations or semi-formal ones, awards and this and that. And also I think the thing I learned from being president for myself and my own kind of platform skills was that it was the first time really I was representing an organization.
Right. Yeah.
Because if I'm just being Lee Jackson, I can just be whoever I want,
Yeah. Yeah.
and clients choose to book me or not. People on this podcast will choose to like it or not. I don't mind that, because if they don't like me, I wouldn't work with them anyway, because they wouldn't book me. So, but there's an element, it's slightly different when you're representing an organization. And I quite enjoyed that side of it, where I could, be professional and represent organization, but also be a little bit cheeky as well. And I would often lighten up quite boring international speakers meetings with little jokes and little asides, which seem to go down quite well,
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I are quite similar, is neither of us like pomposity.
Yeah.
And I think both of us will set out to puncture it. It's just like, it's one of those things where you think, yes, it's the trade body, but ultimately we're all volunteers. We're all doing it for our own benefit. Yeah. And you have to just take it with a pinch of salt. Some people do take it a bit too seriously.
Still quite like the adage, take your job seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, completely.
When people book me for a conference, I will absolutely take my job very seriously. I might be humorous on stage, but I am deadly serious about my job as a presentation coach, a speaker. But I don't take myself too seriously. And I know who I look like. I know I look like Keith Chegwin, and I'm fine with that. I know I look like, what I mean? It's those elephant in the room. I know if I take myself too seriously, it actually creates a barrier between you and the audience, I think.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. So, and it's not that you want to send yourself up. You don't want to undermine your own credibility, but you've got to have a sense of perspective about this. I mean, what we do is slightly bonkers. It has to be said. To put yourself out there all the time on stage and to enjoy it. But you've got to have some fun with it. Because if you don't have fun with it, your audience ain't going to have fun with it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I came to visit you in Brighton a couple of years ago, didn't I, where you live? And we went to the cafe, your partner's cafe and stuff, and it was great. But even then, I remember talking to you. You were just talking about how mad Brighton was, when we were there. Yeah. That it's you can't get a coffee for less than £4.50, and you have to you're not allowed to receive a coffee unless you've got a beard. Do you know what I mean? It was all that
kind the most overqualified baristas in this city. It's extraordinary. you need an MSc or something like that before you can serve coffee. Yeah.
But that's just how and I do the same for Leeds here. That's just how it is, and it's great. So Steve, how do people get hold of you? And you've got a presentation skills book as well, haven't you?
I do. I have the Authority Guide to Presenting and Public Speaking, which is available on Amazon and all the usual places. And actually, it's just been translated into Russian, interestingly. Wow. So that's now on sale in Russia, weirdly. So I'm hoping for some Moscow bookings sometime soon. And then, you can find me I'm on Twitter. I'm at Steve in Brighton. Guess where I live. I'm at Steve in Brighton on Twitter. You can find my website, which is getyourvoiceheard.co.uk. Or you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and all the usual places. It's get in touch.
So thanks, Steve. It's been great to have you on the podcast, and I look forward to supporting you as PSA president. And thanks for your honesty and for just being yourself and giving us all those great tips. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers, then.
Thanks for listening to the Get Good at Presenting podcast with your host, Lee Jackson. If you'd like to know more about Lee's work as a motivational keynote speaker and presentation coach, visit his website at leejackson.biz. That's leejackson.biz.